There we go.
Okay, and we're back. Thanks so much for joining us, Kelly from Vermont Legal Aid. And sorry, we've cut a few minutes into your time. We will have you back. I'm sure. We just wanted to get started.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. So good morning, committee members. My name is Kelly Kazmarski. I'm a staff attorney at Vermont Legal Aid. For new committee members, Vermont Legal Aid provides free legal services to Vermont residents. We also maintain a website with many practical tools, forms, and legal information at vtlawhelp.org. I have been asked to deliver an information sheet that I have here about projects at Legal Aid with contact information, and I can leave that with the clerk for distribution to the committee.
Are there copies or?
Right now I just have the one copy,
okay.
but I'd be happy to email it or whatever would be easier for committee members. This describes our projects at Legal Aid with contact information, and you should please feel free to refer constituents to us with civil legal issues. We're happy to try to help. Rachel Seelig and Mike Fisher are the legislative liaisons for Legal Aid. And you can also contact them if you need constituent service assistance. So happy to be here. Thank you for an opportunity to speak today about Legal Aid's concerns regarding Vermont's unemployment compensation program for claimants. We recently sent a letter to the chair, which I believe was shared with the committee, outlining 5 major concerns that Legal has with the program as we begin the new year. And I would like to just highlight a few of those points here. The first is that the department is not meeting legal standards with regard to serving claimants with limited English proficiency. Since 2016, the Federal Department of Labor has said that states have to provide notices called BABL notices on all notices containing vital information, including decisions. A BABL notice is just a short notice in multiple languages that informs a person that the communication contains vital information and explains how to access services in the client's language. The Vermont Department of Labor will get an interpreter on the phone if a claimant can figure out that they should do that and how to do that, to call the Department of Labor, that is. But the department is violating the law by not providing proper notices or meaningful access to the UI program in Vermont for claimants with limited English proficiency.
I just want to say they were in and they let us know they are drafting a response to this letter that they will come in and share with us. On any of these pieces, if you've received an informal response that you want to share and whether or not you feel that's adequate, you could do that as well.
Thank you. We haven't yet received an informal response, but the department did just receive, as you all did, the letter. So thank you. I didn't realize that they were intending to do that. We'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah,
we're always,
I'm not speaking out of turn.
Not at all. We're always open to communicating with the department. We actually have quite a history of working with the department on lots of these issues over the last few years. So we welcome opportunities to work with them.
And we saw that you had positive feedback on the backlog.
Yes.
And, we just heard from them that they have 3 open adjudication positions and only 1 application at all. So we know, we're hearing,
absolutely,
all sides of the story. And of course, the workforce shortage is really.
Absolutely. And we know the department worked very hard to solve that problem caused by the just deluge of claims during the pandemic. So, and we know there are very good people at the department working very hard to solve these problems. We understand that. Good morning, Senator. The second issue I'd like to highlight is regarding overpayments and waivers of overpayments. In February of last year, 2022, the Federal Department of Labor instructed states to waive federal COVID overpayments when claimants were without fault for the overpayment. And the Vermont Department of Labor has finalized a good policy on waiver of overpayments pursuant to the federal guidance, but they have yet to implement it or to publicize it to claimants. So previously unemployed workers are still being billed for accidental overpayments that the federal government says should be forgiven. While administrative law judges and the Employment Security Board are implementing waivers regularly, this only helps claimants that have pending appeals. Vermonters who have final Vermont Department of Labor decisions are not aware that they can still ask for a waiver of those federal COVID overpayments. So that's definitely a second area of concern. The third issue is that Vermont Legal Aid is proposing new legislation which would allow workers in certain compelling situations to receive unemployment benefits after a family emergency has resolved. Current Vermont statutes do not allow an individual to collect unemployment benefits if they had to leave a job for reasons such as an unexpected loss of daycare, an unexpected illness, or the need to care for a very ill family member.
So, and you know, it's interesting, as we talk with other advocates, legal minds, and our own legal counsel about that, one of the issues that has come up is that shoehorning a need for paid family leave and paid family and medical leave into the unemployment system.
Mhm.
So just know that that's kind of what the question on my mind, and that is coming up as we've spoken.
Sure.
And now that's become a bigger question of, you know, what moves in the building and in what form. So.
And I read a bit in Digger about the coming proposal for paid family leave. I've not actually read a proposal yet of that, so it's sort of difficult to speak about. But in general, when we talk about leave or paid leave, that applies in a situation where a person has a job to come back to. Unemployment benefits are actually not appropriate in that situation. Mm-hmm. Unemployment benefits are where there is no job to come back to, which is a significant difference really between the two. And like I said, it's hard to comment without actually seeing a draft. Yeah. But I do understand that that's something people are concerned about and talking about, the way those work together, or
that's helpful. But when I try to understand what you mean by no job to come back to, is that because they would get fired for having that particular illness, and do you have some examples where you feel like, well,
yes, absolutely. Some employers are simply unable to hold a position for someone who has to leave because, let's say, for example, their child is repeatedly sick. Right now, the rules are very strict in daycares. You have a runny nose, your child cannot go. And so someone who has to repeatedly call out might wind up terminated because they're just unable to fill their position. Mm-hmm. I understand that the Senate actually has instituted a policy that if you have a loss of daycare, you can work from home. I heard that
for 2 days
without
permission, and then your fuller situation would be adjourned.
Right.
Taken up by the Rules Committee.
Okay. And there are plenty of employers that are not able to offer that for their employees. And this would cover a situation where someone really had, the proposal uses the phrase compelling and necessitous circumstances that require them to not go to work for some reason. So that is certainly another big item for us on our agenda. There is a data sheet that we have prepared about the proposed legislation, which includes information like other states that have passed similar legislation. And I would be happy to pass that around. I believe the chair may have a copy of that already, but I'm happy to make sure committee members get a copy of that data sheet as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the letter.
Sure.
Okay.
There is also an information sheet about specifically about the legislative proposal that I was referring to. So I'd be happy to share that with the committee as well.
Okay, great.
The final thing that I just wanted to emphasize here is the issue of modernization. I did watch the testimony the other day when Commissioner Harrington was here regarding the department's progress on its modernization plan. And we at Legal Aid agree with concerns raised by Senator Clarkson and Senator Brock about how long this process is taking. The department seems to simply accept as part of the regular procedure a process which by its own account will take several more years to implement. And yet almost every problem we raise with the Vermont Department of Labor is in some way caused by or can't be fixed because of outdated, ineffective technology. So we really cannot stress enough how important modernization is for claimants. The Vermont Department of Labor cannot continue to allow outdated technology to keep it from being in conformity with the law, and modernization should be expedited and prioritized in every way possible. So thank you again for an opportunity to speak with you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Senator Brock.
You perhaps, unfortunately, I had another meeting, so I missed the first part of your testimony. Did you address at all the issue of the lack of criminal penalty for unemployment fraud?
No, I did not speak about that. And in our experience at Legal Aid, we really do not see unemployment fraud.
We can cite some very specific egregious examples of that, which the department certainly has records of that. And we had a discussion in the last session about that. I had a measure to reinstitute criminal penalties for overt fraud, for fraud that is provable. And Legal Aid raised the issue, which I know you discussed a little bit in your second point, of where there is an error that has caused an overpayment. And we want to be clear that that is not the intent to deal with those kinds of situations. And so one of the things that I think would be very helpful is I'd love to work with you or whoever from Legal Aid in drafting something this year that addresses the criminal issue, that addresses the situation where even a Vermonter, to give an example, creates a fictitious business and then engages in fraud on multiple occasions, or deliberately falsifies the records as to where he or she worked and the period of time that they worked there in order to collect unemployment. Again, does it repeatedly. And there's no crime at this point, which I see as a problem.
Absolutely, I understand those
The
concerns.
overpayment issue is something that we're also concerned about. Where I think the 10-year period, I think statistics went through to 2019, as I recall, we had something like $55 billion in overpayments for unemployment. And again, to the extent that we can work with Legal Aid and others to identify how can we get that stopped, because the department seems to be impotent.
Absolutely, I agree with you completely. And on the issue of the fraud, that's an interesting proposal you raised to work together to try to address that issue. I would say that in our experience with our clients, fraud issues are just not a priority for Legal Aid. We see very desperate Vermonters who are in need of benefits, who make mistakes perhaps on filing claims, but have no intent to commit any sort of
To the
fraud.
extent that we can figure out a way to separate those two groups out or provide some protection, because the intent, I think, of that is not to penalize people who make an honest mistake, but to penalize people who are trying to game the system. And right now, one of my biggest concerns about fraud in unemployment is that the department can't even tell us how much fraud there has been, particularly during the pandemic. And if other states are an example, it's a huge amount of money, and it affects the amount of money that we potentially have as available, or the things that we can do because of that.
Some of us had our identity stolen and only found out about it when our unemployment claims, which we never made. I did not work for 2 weeks in an Alaskan fish hatchery.
I saw that in the testimony.
Yes, but that it was, I found out, I mean, quite a few people, statewide office holders had the same experience. And I don't know where the data breach was, but it seemed to be a whole cluster of state people.
Oh, yes.
But that somebody was engaged in wholesale fraud.
Absolutely. And lots of just regular Vermonters also had their identity stolen, not state level people. And it was an extreme source of stress and real problems for lots of our clients. I'm still meeting people today who tell me that they had their identity stolen and could not file claims during the pandemic when they certainly would have been eligible. And they just they couldn't manage it. They didn't know what someone else had already filed using their information. So when they went to file, they were locked out. And they had no luck trying to reach the department, trying to get help. And so, yeah, it was a horrible, horrible situation for folks. So we definitely are aware that, and we certainly understand the committee and the legislature's concerns about fraud, and absolutely. We just would emphasize that for our clients, the issues that I spoke about earlier are certainly more of a priority, and we think would better help most regular Vermonters.
Yeah, I'll just give you a sense of, our timing on some of these issues. We are going to take a housing bill up first, so we'll probably call others in legal aid to help us
Sure.
with that
Oh,
one
yes.
as well. I understand Wendy is not going to be in the building as much, and she's
Correct.
passed on her body of work to Rachel.
Correct.
So we're, sad to lose Wendy in that capacity. I'm sure we'll still see her like I did yesterday.
Absolutely.
And then we'll probably turn directly to labor and workplace issues and workforce development in February. If by that time, and Kelly, you've been great in the past about helping us with lived experience.
Yes.
When we have the department back in early February, it would be nice that same day to hear from people impacted by these issues that you outlined. I'm trying to give you a lot of lead time because I know it's really sensitive and you might not find people in certain situations, but it's all of these issues have been of great concern to us. I know with limited English proficiency, people would spend 8-9 hours on the phone trying to get help with an interpreter who was doing that after hours on their own time. So even if it's other people who assisted those who were struggling, we're happy to hear their stories. And that will hopefully help us and help the department hear from those who were impacted, because otherwise
I did one with a granddaughter who was interpreting her grandmother or her mother, and just trying to work through what the issue was.
And it's
it's very challenging
Right,
to work with an interpreter,
Right.
especially over a phone when you're not in person with someone. It's a very challenging process, and I imagine very scary for the person who is facing a debt of several thousands of dollars or a loss of income.
Right. And we know that might have been unintended overpayment situations, which I'm very curious as soon as any of us learn, if they have, if they're going to send some communication out to forgive overpayment for the federal guidelines.
Yes,
Love
we've
to know
been,
that's something
exactly,
and
and we have asked the department to do that and asked them, we put something on our website informing folks who might search the VT Law Help website. We have something on our website about applying for a waiver, but really it should be on the department's website for folks to see and learn.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you still have a little over 5 minutes, and I'm loath to give people another break because we might lose them before our next hearing. We could either go to the chamber since they're here, or if you want to preview any other issues on behalf of your colleagues, if you dare, that's always welcome too.
Thank you very much for the offer. I really, I don't dare to broach my colleagues' subject matters. I'm fortunate to work at Legal Aid where I work with some amazing experts in various subject areas. So I would never attempt to speak on their behalf, but I thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I will look forward to perhaps coming again, as you mentioned, in February. And put together some, I already know of some clients that I think might be willing to come, and perhaps even if other clients are hesitant to come, they might agree to have their stories told by me or someone else. I hope that would be helpful as well.
That's helpful. That's definitely helpful. I will say too, to last year when we finally talked to someone on unemployment with a small child, it was very high impact. So often, we're doing these bills without hearing from anybody actually experiencing unemployment.
I wonder if that was my client.
It was
a little infant
it was
with her. Yes, that's
and we hope she's doing
excellent.
well.
I hope so too. I haven't been in touch with her in a while, but I have a couple of people in mind that I will get in touch with. Is a video testimony an option?
Okay, absolutely.
Wonderful.
That probably helps folks. And especially, it was really helpful to just say out loud this question about paid family leave versus people who are terminated for the same issue. So finding someone who has that story to tell would be helpful, so we can have question and answer period, interact with them to understand, better
Excellent.
why that uniquely needs to be taken care of. Did you have a question?
No, I'm just agreeing with all your suggestions, sorry.
Yes.
Positive reinforcement, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. And one last question, the information sheet about Vermont Legal Aid with the contact, should I just email that to you, Senator, or?
If you email it to Scott,
Perfect.
Scott then gets it to
Perfect.
the rest of
Okay.
us for each of our requests for paper or
Yes.
email or,
Excellent.
just looking at it on our committee website.
So I will continue to send everything your way. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Have a
thanks for
great day.
following all of this. Yeah. So thanks, Kelly. Chamber folks, you can catch your breath for a couple minutes, or you can have an extra 5 minutes. And folks, this is one of my really, really good friends, Madison, who I feel like now I'm like, oh, my friend's watching me chair a committee. Better do my best. But yeah, who's just in town between Burlington and Brattleboro. So.
Nice.
Senator Harrison's from Brattleboro.
Hello, Senator. I'm off to see John Christie Treadwell.
Oh, right. Tell them I said hi.
Yes. So, yeah. And just a reintroduction of Peregrine, who's in between you, who's interning with Senator Brock.
Hello, yeah, I'm a UVM student
And you're studying.
Both economics and political science. I'm double major.
Great. I didn't hear every day or something.
I'll probably
10 hours a
once
week.
a week.
Yeah, but he works offsite as well.
Yeah, we have 8 interns as well, about half from UVM and half from St. Mike's as well. So they're sort of doing the same thing where you'll see them in committee from time to time, but they're also doing some remote work for us and helping us keep tabs on all the committees.
Exactly.
So it's hard to be everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And I
That's
was.
the technology.
Great. Oh, yeah, no, that's fine.
And I'm gonna share.
Yeah. Someone can sit in the seat too.
Yes.
I was natural resources and political science double degree.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I'm
so
proud of you
sorry.
for attempting the double degree.
Oh, must be a trend. I was history and sociology.
There you go. You might end up in one of these seats for being an overachiever. Who knows?
Political science and community and international development, which I feel like is too many words for.
So long ago, I don't remember.
Great.
I'm happy to say in college, I took 0 political science courses and 0 economics courses.
And those are both of your jobs.
And look at you now.
What did you take then?
History
Oh, well, that's good. It always helps.
and chemistry, and stuff like that.
Okay, we're still live and we're now joined by the chamber and you have your presentation up and
Yeah.
we're glad to see you. Great.
Well, thank you, and many familiar faces, but nice to meet you, Senator Harrison, and Betsy Bishop, President with the Vermont Chamber of Commerce.
Megan Sullivan, Vice President of Government Affairs with Vermont Chamber of Commerce.
So we just wanted to come and just sort of introduce ourselves to those of you that have been in the building before certainly know us through our advocacy lens, and we'll talk a little bit about our priorities today. But we're also going to talk a little bit about what we do outside of the building, which many legislators aren't as familiar with, which of course you would anticipate, but we have a programming and education that we'll chat with as well. Sort of at the core of what we do is working toward a thriving economic community. In our community, we're the only statewide chamber of commerce, so our community is the entire state. There's about 30 chambers of commerce in the state. Many of you know them from your particular regions, and I know Austin was in earlier today. And we all work together in a collaborative fashion, and at the root of what we do is economic vitality. But everybody is delivering that in a different way. So a local community chamber might be doing it just for their community and might not really have advocacy as part of their agenda items. But that's a big part of what we do. But we reach into every county in the state. And so that's sort of how we're all tied together. We do share a name, but we're all independent of each other too. So just because I say something doesn't mean that your local chamber is saying that as well, although we do communicate with them. And we do represent many of the same businesses. So I think that covers that. I'm going to talk a little bit about our team. These are the people that you will see in the building. Megan and I are here today. Amelia Seaman has been with us for about a year. She is Senator Clarkson. Amelia is a Vermonter, went to St. Michael's College, went to DC to work for Senator Leahy for a period of time, and then came home. So we're glad to have her on our team. Amy Spear and Chris Kerrigan are really deep experts in their particular industries. Amy covers the tourism industry. If you want to understand what's happening in the industry, in restaurants, in lodging, Amy is the person who has not only all the data, but all the context. So if you need to be connected with somebody in that place, Amy is that person for you. Whereas Chris really focuses on the manufacturing division, and both of them will come into the legislature and testify on various issues that are related to those particular things. And we'll get into their programming work in a little bit.
And I have to say, I really enjoyed being on Amy's restaurant industry newsletter. Everyone has the option to be on it in this committee. And I don't know if Chris Kerrigan has like a regular email list, but I'm not on it.
So we can talk about our lists, and
Yeah.
we hesitate a little bit, like putting you on all the lists.
Right,
and
right.
People going, I get enough newsletters, so I don't want to be on
That's
those
fair.
lists.
Yeah, but it's our choice whether to
We
take
should-
them and read them
yeah.
fully. It would be
So
great to get them.
We automatically put all legislators on what we call State to Main, which is our weekly legislative newsletter.
Right, which
And
we
the
get.
thing about that is, if you do take the opportunity to read through it, you'll understand our perspective. We're not journalists, so it is slanted toward our world. And it often is covering issues that maybe aren't being covered in the press but they are issues happening in this building. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Megan, the 2 seconds on your bio.
So I have known
here
most
before,
of you
yeah.
before. I previously worked for the Agency of Commerce and the Vermont Economic Progress Council, and prior to that worked for now Senator Welch for many years. So have had 20 years now, which is getting longer. Years working in economic development in Vermont, and had the opportunity to get all over the state. And so being part of the Vermont Chamber is incredible because we get to represent businesses and industries in every corner of the state, in every industry in the state.
And I've been at it for a little longer than 20 years. I feel like I too have a role in policy development and serving Vermonters, and I've been doing that in a variety of different roles inside of government and outside of government. My interest is advancing good policy for Vermont. We might not always agree on what that good policy is, but we really see ourselves, and what I really trained the advocacy team to do is we're here to help shape legislation. I got asked by somebody in House of Commerce yesterday, where do you come down on this or that? We try not to come down on this or that. We try to work toward a common end. And for those of you who have worked with us, you understand that. And I hope to work with you in that manner as well. So that's really what we're here for. We like to think that we're a resource for you. We're a connection to businesses that you may not know or that you want to know more. We try to bring them into the building so that you can hear from them firsthand. Certainly the video component makes that a little bit easier, right? So that's great.
And in addition to the 5 of us shown here, we have 8 interns working with us this semester from University of Vermont and St. Michael's College. We're hoping to have them in the building because that's hugely impactful for their learning experience to really get to know how state government works, as well as to get to meet more people. And part of our work, I'm trying to say, we have great jobs and opportunities here in the Focus State here after college. So if you see someone with a Vermont Chamber name tag who's not one of these 5, they're likely one of our interns, and just to introduce yourself and ask them about themselves.
And then we're gonna have Kevin Chu in separately, but you house his work.
Where
Or
he's
launched it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we launched it for sure. We felt, and this is our last slide. We'll get to that. But yes, Kevin is a huge asset, so I'm glad that you're going to have him in, so absolutely. Just to talk a little bit first about our advocacy work, our 3 main priorities for this year are economic stewardship, which is at the heart of what we do, making sure that we have a healthy economy so we can afford all the things that we want to do in government. Increasing the supply of workforce housing, that is really our number one priority this year, and elevating our achievements and the good work that you folks are doing here in the state. And so Megan's going to talk a little bit more in depth about each one of those.
So part of what we're able to do in our work outside of the State House is really understand what's going on in the economy more broadly. And so as we're talking with members, we're hearing about the impacts of things like, high inflation rates, hearing about things like the supply chain issues that continue to be a huge struggle for everyone from manufacturers to restaurants. Also, things that are happening around wages. We've seen wages increase since 2019, 21.8%. And just in the last year, we've seen a report that wages have gone up 8% in the state and 10% specifically in hospitality. That's a good thing, but it also means that there's pressure on businesses that are having to absorb these costs as they're recovering from the pandemic still. And those economic forces are not things that can be controlled in this building, but we want to make sure that people are aware of them. And as proposals are being talked about with really good purposes, it's really crucial to understand how they all interact with each other and what the total impact is, so that we can ensure that we're still maintaining a vibrant economy. We're advancing Vermont's economy for growth for all Vermonters and keeping a sustainable business economy going. So that's part of what we're going to do. It's not a specific proposal, but really just looking at what the comprehensive impact is as we're talking about proposals in different rooms. And that's something we get to do, is be in lots of different places throughout the day, so that we can really be tracking how those are moving together.
So the good news about our housing bills and our, workforce bills that we're working on right now is they don't have huge price tags, in fact, so far. But, something with the big price tag that we're all going to be looking at, especially next week when the RAND report comes out, is childcare. We're going to have a lot of businesses come in next week and tell us that that's a priority for them and they want to help pay for that. And I just wonder if you have any comments there, as that is the item we'll look at with the biggest price tag this biennium.
I think that is part of the sort of under our economic stewardship piece, because we think that addressing childcare is super important. And I think we've done a lot of good work in that area. And I think that's something that we should take a look at. I think we should talk about, what we have been doing. When you think about the childcare piece being something with a big price tag, it's not the only thing that is for child and families that's coming with a big price tag. So we want to be part of this concept is, how do we look at the whole as opposed to each thing in by itself? How much can Vermont government, people, businesses afford at one time? And it can't be done with just one thing at a time. So part of us, we're also looking forward to the RAND report coming out to know what that price tag is. We understand there's got to be a fix, and the question of how much, how quick, all of that stuff you're going to wrestle with, and we're going to hopefully be at the table helping with that as well.
Great. So
just to tag on to that, two of the issues we're going to be dealing with in this committee and just in the legislature this year, obviously childcare and paid family leave. I'd love to know if you have the data on how many of your businesses that you represent offer a childcare benefit already and offer paid family leave of some variety, a paid family leave benefit, because we're told that many businesses do, but I'm just curious if you have a notion from your membership.
We don't have that data handy. My instinct from years of working on these issues is that the people who answer those surveys are the people who have staff to answer those surveys, which tend to be office type workers, which tend to be skew a little larger businesses, which are going to skew to, yes, we have done that. Where we fall a little bit is where 90% of Vermont businesses are small, tiny businesses, 10, 15, 25, 35, whatever. Those businesses tend not to have the resources to offer some of this. So I don't have the data. My guess is that I would be curious what the state has available. They have a tie into every single business.
Yeah.
I don't have that data handy.
Okay. And because you haven't mentioned either of those as in your 3 priorities, which,
Well, and while we're talking about it, the third
Yeah.
one, when we're talking about child and families, is the child tax credit from last year
Right.
too. So, you know, all of these things, it's not as if nothing has been done prior to today. So like thinking about all of those things together.
Yeah.
And frankly, we're looking for a little guidance too from the legislature of, you know, is it all gonna happen? Are pieces and parts, you know, those types of things. So we'll be here to do that. Megan.
it's evolving.
It will for you and for us, so yes.
Senator Brock, or Miss.
Betsy, I'm just curious on your number of 1 billion in proposed taxes. We know about paid family leave, we know about school lunches, we know about childcare. Is there something we're missing? I'm still having trouble coming up with
Yeah.
$1 billion.
Well, we have a list.
Yeah, we have a
Right,
list.
I'd like to see
We
that
can
list.
add it to the list every time there's a news story.
So it'll include, you know, increases in property taxes because education spending is going up. And it includes things like if we're proposing a new cloud tax this year,
Mhm.
you know, what is the cost of that? And we've heard folks talking about, well, what is a 1% increase in a sales tax? You know, what could that hit the state? What is if we create a new service tax, what would that provide the state? And so when we hear people proposing sort of ways to generate revenue that are going to either increase existing revenue streams or create new revenue streams, those are all.
These are things people are
Taking
talking
mo-
about, but not
They're
necessarily.
not
being
proposed.
Absolutely.
Obviously, they're proposed.
Absolutely. And even on the thing, on the childcare thing, which we're all talking about with a really, like, as you said, a big price tag, we know that it's not all coming in. It's not going to be 1 billion. But to be fair, we're already hearing at the end of week 2 of $1 billion of ideas that somebody's putting in a proposal and wants to move forward. We know that how this building works, that will get synthesized to something else. But our whole point in this is the perspective when we get into individual committees to talk about specific bills, they're just looking at that. And we often hear, well, yes, that's happening in some other committee. Sure. But for a business person, at the end of the day, when things pass, it all comes to them, regardless of which committee it came through. So we're trying to just make sure that committees understand the broader perspective of not only what's happening in this building, but what's happening externally as far as additional costs that aren't under your control.
Senator Fexler.
So, you know, this session will be dealing in part, and we'll continue to look at the fallout of the lessons we've learned in COVID. And so businesses learned, we learned a lot, businesses learned a lot. We learned that childcare was essential. We learned that actually having leave and getting paid to take care of people who were sick that nobody else was going to care for was critically important. And so I guess I'm just curious, I'd appreciate at some point, maybe not today, but you're coming back to us a little bit with some of the things you felt you learned the most out of what we went through and what, these are issues that we're dealing with coming out of COVID, but it also looks sort of like old chamber, you know. So some of those things we learned were really important to business.
And they still are. And I think we can talk about that. And I think, we understand there's a lot of need. There's always been a lot of need. I think COVID has changed us all. And I think we always will, pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, need to figure out a balance of how much and how quickly. And I think back to, years ago, we had a minimum wage discussion in this committee, and it sort of reminds me of that as well. We didn't say no. We said, can we think about the path and the time and how much and how, and that is how we will come to this table on all of these issues. We know it's not going to be 1 billion. Let me rephrase that. We really hope it's not 1 billion. We don't see anybody suggesting that, but they can't be taken in isolation because they will stack And, they will stack eventually, and we have to think about that. And it's stacking on top of economic factors that are not happening in this building, which have to come into the conversation. So this is what this slide and this discussion is. So I don't love the fact that you're giving it the label of old chamber,
Well,
but I
just
want
that-
you to understand how we're bringing it forward is sort of in the spirit of we're a resource for you, we're a window to our constituency, and these are the things people are telling us. So when you come to us with a big childcare ask, we have to take into account, you need to understand these other factors before we get to that. So
and we appreciate that.
I think we're trying to bring it forward, like in a broad concept.
Appreciate it.
And I mean, to Senator Clarkson's larger point, you talk about Lansing hiring freezes. We're really concerned about 24,000 open jobs in the state, and I'm sure you are too. And so we're trying to figure out how to be a good partner to business as they try to attract Gen Z and remote workers and all of those. And we know housing is a big piece of it. Senator Harrison.
Just a clarifying question, that's in quotes, so is that the chamber
It's me.
speaking?
Me,
That's you.
probably
Okay.
speaking somewhere, somebody like, that's, yes,
Okay,
yes.
And you'll see that with our.
okay. Just wanted
We've
to-
got two other sort of big priorities, and you'll notice they're all intertwined, like for all of you, like you can't talk about workforce without talking about childcare, without talking about housing, without talking about tax capacity. This is the big puzzle. It's what we love to do, and it's why we're all here, right? Because these are big thoughts that we've got to figure out.
Right. Those who build housing need housing and childcare too. So we
It's
just
all of
like,
that.
we can't do anything without.
Yeah, it's something
these
we've heard
big-
before. Isn't it?
I think these aren't particularly new topics, and I
Right.
think that's part of our work is each year we're advancing a little piece of that. And I think it's hard to do big, bold things all quickly, all at once. And so we're part of that. So go ahead.
So our next big priority, and I would say this is our number one priority, like so many people in the state, is increasing the workforce housing supply. And we've partnered on an op-ed that ran this week. I'm not sure if everyone has seen it. I know I've sent it out to a few folks.
You can send
Boldly
it to title.
this has to stop. And we partnered with Vermont Professionals of Color Network and AARP on that. And really saying that, if we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars into housing, but we're seeing projects getting delayed and derailed or downsized. And it's more than money. We need to fix other parts of the system that are making that the money that we're investing not go far enough, and that we're not fixing the full continuum of housing that needs to be addressed, both on income levels and on types of housing. And so, on housing, we've worked very closely with the HFA. We've been talking with the people in the building who are working on housing proposals. I know in our roundtable that you came to, that led the conversation for most of the time that you were there, was how housing is really impeding our ability to attract and retain workers in the state. So in that, we've talked about 4 policy areas we'd love to see work on for that middle income worker who's really struggling to find opportunities to stay in the state and take the jobs that we have opening. And those include breaking down barriers, and that's both at the state and local level, looking at state permitting, Act 250, and local zoning requirements that are making it hard to put up housing. And the next is strategic investments. We've worked with VHFA and are excited about the proposals that are being put out there to look at how do we invest in creating these middle housing opportunities. Public-private partnerships. We would really love to have employers at the table as we're talking about how do we create how do we create housing that meets employers' needs, that employers can be there and talking about who are the workers that they're losing. And we're actually collecting data right now from employers to really get a handle on, what are the positions that you're not able to fill or that you're losing, and what are those salary ranges, just to understand, where on this spectrum of income are we really falling short. And we also think there needs to be some data collected, and have for 2 years supported the short-term, the rental registry, which includes short-term rentals, and are still supportive of that, and think, you know, the data that's available now is helpful, but there's really more information that's needed. And so we'd love to see that brought back again this year, as just a way to understand what is the impact this is having, where is the impact, and if it's not that sort of leading problem, then we don't have to spend as much time thinking about it. But without the data, we can't make that determination.
And I will just add on the short-term rental registry piece, you know, this has been something that tourists want. They want that. We want to deliver that for them. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have good data on how much of that is happening. We do think anecdotally that it's squeezing the housing rental market. But when you talk about things that have changed during COVID, what's happened in short-term rentals in COVID has changed, and we don't know the magnitude of that. And I think that would help us when we're talking about, I just read a story on, you know, property tax rates on second homeowners versus non-residential versus all of these things. So we just don't have good data on that. So
Well, one of the things we heard this morning when we were talking with the FA is that they believe that they in fact have the ability to get most of that data without adding a registry or anything else, that the data is in fact available.
Well, it's volume, but not specific.
And they can do that for a month or longer, which help
Well,
us
again,
in
the
the term
question
for
is
that
whether or
too.
not
With the
that is
medium thing.
adjustable, which
Right.
we still
Yes,
are
which we're
waiting
gonna-
based on the
yeah.
data sources
Yeah.
we have.
And what's happening is many of the towns that are reliant upon tourists are starting to, at the town, at the municipal level, put that in themselves and have that registry.
Well, we made that opportunity available by letting towns create the ordinances around short-term rentals.
Right. And so that has been giving us some very interesting information that if we were to collate that at the state level, I think it would help us understand what's happening there.
Any data you want to bring in, we welcome. We're having the short-term rental alliance in, and they have been working in Lamoille and Washington counties, as you may know, to better understand their own, you know, base of renters. And
I would encourage you to bring Amy Spear into that conversation. She's
Right.
worked with the
Okay.
Short-Term Rental Alliance. She's worked on this issue for a number of years, and she's got a lot of data that she can bring to the table.
I have a hard time remembering things right now, so if
I've
you
got it.
tell Scott. Yeah. But just, yeah, I mean, we'd
I've
love to
got
have your other team members come in and tell us about the
She's
state of
she's
restaurant and lodging.
got a really good handle on it.
Great.
So our
You heard me on this.
our next priority for this session is really about getting to that, you know, we've got between 20 and 24,000 job openings. We have, I think Commissioner Harrington said 8,400 unemployed Vermonters, and we have about 5,000 people graduating every year. That leaves a huge gap in our workforce, and we know we need more people in the state. We need to be able to attract more people. And you all do incredible work here each year. And, you know, thinking about some of the things that have been passed, putting in place climate action goals. We need to celebrate that and tell people about that. And where people are living in states where they're struggling with the impacts of climate change, know that Vermont is here and that we've set these goals. And not only can you come here and live in a state that appreciates what your values are, but that we also have incredible job opportunities in that field. I think similarly, as we've reached 50% of communities that have adopted the Declaration of Inclusion, to be able to share that story and talk about what we're doing in the DEI space, that we're a welcoming, inclusive state for all people, and build that workforce in a really diverse and welcoming way. Elevating the achievements of this state and of what you're doing in this building is an incredibly important way to tell our story, and make sure that people around the nation know, and within Vermont, as we're trying to hold people here and retain them, know what you're doing, so that we can build our workforce. So
what's the barrier to your telling that story? There is no barrier. And I just have to say, Betsy, I would take back the old chamber piece, except for the tax thing.
Well, we're always gonna talk about
But this is,
taxes.
I have to say what Megan just said is new chamber.
Yes.
Okay, when I was first here, the chamber would never have said what you just said about supporting our climate change workforce, our new energy workforce, or even acknowledging there was climate change. So
Well, and
Thank
so
you. I
I'm not
appreciate
sure,
that.
I'm not sure, what year did you start?
05.
Oh, so
You and I were here together.
we were, but I wasn't leading the chamber.
I
We have
acknowledge
just a few
that.
minutes.
It's Betsy's new chamber,
But
ever since you.
I appreciate the recognition of the evolution.
Yes.
Because there absolutely has been an evolution. And one of the things that we know when it comes to workforce is there's just not enough. And most of the work that this committee has done over the last number of years and that we have supported and even brought ideas to you is about how do we get Vermonters off the bench and into the workforce. And there's a very robust workforce system in Vermont. We're putting money into it. It's good, it's strong. We need more people to take advantage of that program. Some of that is in the education, higher education, nurse loan forgiveness. Some of that is in skilled training, various things. In addition to doing those things, we need to figure out how to open a pipeline to get more people to call Vermont home. And those people are not being told of the good work that you're doing. And so the DOI, the Declaration of Inclusion, is one piece we're helping with. We're not the point of it, wasn't our idea, but we're trying to do.
Are you working with Heather on this?
So on this elevating achievements, we're not.
Because I think that's where the money is for promoting this.
The money is there for tourism promotion. And-
Also for relocated workers and remote
And
work.
for
I mean, they're
relocated
promoting
workers
Think
and for
Vermont.
that.
Think Vermont supports this.
Right, and so in the past, when we've worked with the administration, those ideas have not really made it past first base in this building.
Let's work on that.
And so we deliberately did not go to the administration this year and say, why don't you put together a plan? We would like you all to think about, what are you proud of? What do you wish people who do not live here would know about Vermont, the work that you've done? Megan mentioned climate goals. What about the child tax credit last year? Who knows about that? The people who got it don't even know about it.
Correct.
Let alone come to Vermont and get it. You know, the 10%, you mentioned the 10% threshold on childcare. We're not doing anything to elevate your achievements that you work so hard on. We're suggesting that as you think about those achievements, think about what you're going to do to promote it. It takes money, and you can task Heather to do it after you think about that. But I'm a little concerned that if it's one person's idea, it doesn't move forward. And so we're saying we see it as a need. We've got to fill the pipeline.
Right. And, you know, a bad story about the racial homeownership gap or a really bad police interaction, you know, it's scary to move to a place like Vermont, one of the whitest states in the country, if that's the headline that you see. It's scary to even come here and be a traveling nurse, you know, and your family says, I don't know if I want you to go to this state. So, you know, help us also remind most Vermonters that there's a retention problem here and that it's everyone's job to make this a safe and welcoming place to live.
And,
Right.
and we think that the DOI is a very teeny
Teeny.
piece of
Yeah,
that.
we
but it-
appreciate it.
Yeah, but it's an important piece, but only if, when we get to a good threshold, we can tell more people about it. So I recognize that we're almost out of time. I want to just cover two quick things. Are we done at 11:30? Is that?
Yeah,
what we are?
We have to be on the floor at
Before
11:30.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
This slide is probably it.
I'm just going to tell you that in the tourism area, in the manufacturing area, we're doing a lot of work outside of this building. Programming, recruiting people in the tourism industry to come to Vermont, and doing that. And in manufacturing, we're building an aerospace and aviation corridor. This is something that if you want to know more about manufacturing, we've got a lot of resources. in
And
that.
we'll try to include it on our field trip.
It is
That's
a
fine.
big
Yeah.
success.
It's very
Yes,
exciting.
absolutely.
Yes, I'm excited.
Thank you. And then finally, Kevin Chu will come in.
Yeah.
He's our data guy. He's our
love Kevin.
research and education arm, and I'm glad that you're gonna have him in separate.
I've been
He's
quoting him
fabulous.
all over the place. I need to have him in so that I can give him some
But if
credit.
you ever need data on something with a snappy chart instead of a long
We
explanation,
love snappy.
he's the guy.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you for your work.